You are listening to the SDSU Football Podcast, presented by the East Village Times, with your hosts Andre Hagverdian and Paul Garrison. Welcome, listeners, to another episode of the SDSU Football Podcast. I am Andre Hagverdian and joined, as always, by Paul Garrison. What's going on, Paul?
What's going on, Andre? What a nice day, man. I mean, there's so much going on. San Diego State basketball, right? They had their conference media day, got to participate in that. You know, here directly in front of me, Kawhi's back on the court, and then I get to talk Aztec football with a buddy, man. So, I mean, doing great. How are you?
Yeah, like somebody posted or tweeted this. Today is the 27th day ever where there's an NFL, MLB, NBA, and NHL game on the same night or at the same time.
Wild.
That is pretty crazy. That's only ever happened 27 times.
I would never have guessed that. Never. But yeah, so it's good, man. It's good. I think the bye week, nice and refreshed and ready to start the second half of the season. I think it's going to be a really fun second half, if only because I can't remember a time where the outcomes of these games doesn't feel like you already know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And the talent, I don't know if it's a talent level, just wherever the teams are, being able to figure out exactly who's going to win. There's just parity, man. And so I think it makes for a lot of exciting stuff and should be pretty fun.
The conference is definitely wide open, if not for the fact that there's probably not a great team out there this year, which gives everybody an opportunity to fight for that conference, that division spot, and then a spot in the championship game. And, who knows what'll happen there. And I think it obviously for San Diego State, it started with the victory against Hawaii before the bye. And, has to continue with on the road at Nevada, and then at Fresno, and then the rest of the schedule. It's a homecoming weekend for Nevada, so, we would expect that their crowd will be, full, loud, raucous. And, we've seen San Diego State struggle mightily on the road this year in 2 losses with a lot of pre-snap penalties. Noise was a factor, so they're gonna. They may not be playing the same type of competition that they did at Utah and at Boise, but pre-snap penalties are the noise is still going to have an impact. So they've been talking about it for weeks about how they're going to improve that, and it's going to be interesting to see whether it actually does improve on the field Saturday night. Right,
and I think the fans in Nevada, like I think any group of 5 fans, they're smart. And they understand that San Diego State has struggled with being able to get their offense going with all these pre-snap penalties. So, they're going to be trying to impact the game, especially because, as you said, it's homecoming. And then I think that there's a good opportunity for the Aztecs to kind of build off of this, because I would imagine, when they go to Fresno, the crowd will be even a little bit bigger and a little bit louder, and it'll be closer to what I think they saw earlier. Can see whether or not they can get these things fixed, because the margin for error, because of all of the parity that we talked about earlier, it's just really slim.
The biggest football news this week was Jalen Maiden being named the permanent starter at quarterback. We had some questions about how, with Burmeister's recovery from concussion and coming out of the bye week, how that would play out. I think we both expected Maiden to get the starts, at least for this game, given how he played against Hawaii. But the news about not just Maiden being the starter, but Burmeister potentially lining up at receiver kind of surprised me a bit. What'd you make of that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't, surprise is absolutely the right term. Having one player be able to switch positions and contribute and do really well is one thing, and people point to all sorts of, Julian Edelman, things like that. He didn't do that in one game. You know what I mean? Like it took some
Yeah.
time to be able to develop that. So, Burmeister hasn't been shy about, talking about his speed and all of these things. And maybe it's just time for him to be able to figure out a way to contribute. It's just interesting because it to me, it just always feels a little bit, want to get the horse before the cart, where it's like
Yeah.
they need to be able to pass the ball to the wide receivers who are there before they start considering, how to bring in a QB. The flip side of it is, it's not easy to switch quarterbacks midseason, and if this keeps him engaged and it keeps the team engaged and it allows them to be able to keep with some of that positive momentum and not make losing the starting job this like terrible thing for him as he was a transfer that came in. I think it can nothing but positives can come from it. And if his speed is plays at receiver, like we saw at different times throughout the season, it is an element that they don't necessarily have with somebody who just can stretch the field and with that blazing speed. Although it's again, it's always going to be that same question about why not Josh Nicholson? Like if you're gonna put a speedster in, why not put the guy in who's played receiver and who you're thinking is going to be one of your better receivers down the throughout the years. And after watching a safety throw for 322 yards, where a QB who stated as a QB and did all that could barely get 100. I'm kind of ready for anything that's going to come. I mean, I'm expecting Jack Browning to go to safety next.
Yeah, it is pretty wild what's transpired in half a season. From Burmeister's perspective, I get it. As you said, this is his last year. He wants to be on the field. He wants to help. But I don't like this really too much from a team perspective because he's already coming off multiple injuries. If he's going to be your backup quarterback, then lining up at another position where he could get injured without ever even actually playing quarterback doesn't make a lot of sense to me. If the Aztecs were hurting at wide receiver, like depth wise or talent wise, I could see it, but I don't think that's the case either. If they were moving Burmeister to wide receiver because they had so much depth at quarterback, then that would make sense too. But in this scenario, I just think you're playing with fire, putting him in at a different position when he's still supposed to be your backup quarterback. And
Yeah, I think you're completely right. I will just say the caveat is I don't expect him to get very many snaps.
yeah.
You know what I mean? They talked about him having a package or something like that, and if they want to try some sort of like gimmick play or something else, like that's fine. I think the only caveat is that he's probably not going to get too many snaps. And
I get that, but it's just even it only takes one snap. We've seen him get hit and get injured. It only takes one snap for you to go for a pass over the middle or deep and get hit the wrong way or fall the wrong way or whatever. And then next thing you know, you're down to two scholarship quarterbacks.
mm-hmm.
And if Maiden gets hurt, then Leo's in, and you've got nobody out. It's obviously we're talking about what ifs, but I just don't know how smart this is. If they actually do put him out there as a receiver and have him run routes and throw to him, I don't know. Hopefully, my concern becomes moot and nobody gets injured. But I still think you're playing with fire, and from a coaching perspective, it doesn't make any sense to me.
I don't necessarily disagree. And like I said, I still would like to see how he's being used. I mean, I thought it was strange the way they've used him the whole entire year, to be honest. I mean, the number of QB runs and things like that. But ultimately, I mean, that's I talking about the coaching and stuff. There's a lot of different ways to look at Maiden switching. So maybe, just jumping into that a little bit. I mean, on the one hand, you could talk about missing, right? I mean, looking and saying, okay, well, this guy was able to come in and do this, and you moved him to safety, right? And I think that's super valid. I think another way to look at it is there's a lot of coaches who would not allow a quarterback They might move him back as an emergency, but allow him to win the job to show in front of the public like how wrong you were to move him to safety to begin with. There's a lot of coaches that are prideful and arrogant that way and just like wouldn't let that happen, even if that was really what was going to be best. Wouldn't go and stand up in front of us when we asked and just said, "Hey, why did that happen?" That's the choice that I made. I asked him to move, and to own that. So I think that's really good. You could also talk about just the fact that the culture is such that they want to win and they want to play in any way possible, and they're like looking for ways to do that, and keeping that kind of an approach. I think it is interesting. So you can talk about that, but I think overall, and obviously comment on any of that or any other ways to see it. I think overall, man, I just think this should be the story should be about Jalen Mayton, and it should be about how this just doesn't happen, and it takes something remarkable, to actually see it transpire.
Yeah, agree on all fronts. I think, we saw him get in the game right away, 5 days later, and then we had a 2 week bye and a 2 week gap. So it's going to be interesting to see, how that transpired. Are they going to have the momentum still? Did they lose any momentum? The other teams now have film on him. There's definitely positivity that comes from the last game. And it's just a matter of the coaching staff and Maiden and the rest of the team continuing that and fine tuning that, because obviously there was some stuff to clean up. Shifting to Nevada, they're a completely different team from what we saw last year, not just with head coach, but, had a lot of people leave either to the NFL or the transfer portal. I think they have 50 new guys, 29 transfers. They've kind of moved from like this passing air raid offense to, ground and pound with their two running backs. What do you make of their team, so far this season?
I mean, I think you hit it, and I think that Aztec fans who got used to Carson Strong throwing it all over the place, spreading everybody out, and doing all that stuff, it's obviously going to be a different game. And I think that there's danger here for the Aztecs. Nevada runs the ball well, and San Diego State has not been able to stop the run very well at times. They talked about the confidence that they have that's been fixed, the confidence that they have that that's not going to be the case, that they're going to get back to all the things that they want to do. Okay, great. But they're going to have to prove that, right? They're going to have to prove that that's actually what would happen. And obviously, if they're able to stop the run, I wouldn't anticipate this game being terribly competitive. I think, with that San Diego State's offense, I think it's kind of, the score is always going to be close no matter what. But this kind of game is a really good game to start after the bye, because they better be able to tackle. They better be able to do that, or Nevada's going to be able to run the football. You talked about cleaning things up. There was a couple of times where Maiden could have been picked off. As you said in your preview, Nevada has done a great job of being able to create turnovers, especially interceptions. So I think that there are, I guess, some question marks. There are some things to look for that could make the game be a lot closer than maybe it should be.
Tua Tawa, who's the fifth-year running back, has been at Nevada his whole career, kind of climbing the rushing career statistics for Nevada. He's had a great year, not just running the ball, but also receiving. San Diego State actually recruited him out of high school, out of Lompoc, California. So there's probably, just obviously a lot of the coaching staff on the offensive side is still there. Obviously not the head coach was Rocky Long at the time, but there's probably some familiarity there with him. But stopping the run and missed tackles, obviously Jonah Tavai has had a great year. But it'll be interesting to see if some of the other guys, Keyshawn Banks has probably not played up to his standards. Justice Tavai next to Jonah, his brother. And then some of the safeties, Patrick McMorris and TJ Baskerville are highly rated guys, but they've struggled with a lot of missed tackles themselves. And so I'm curious to see how that entire defense, but especially those guys, respond coming off the bye.
It is because of everything that happened with Jalen Mayden. I mean, if there's if there could ever be like a reset at a bye week at the halfway point of your season, like this is the opportunity for that. And I think that the Aztecs have the opportunity to kind of give themselves just a new identity. And I think what that means is getting back to, being the bullies of the conference, being the people who can impose their will. And the teams that they're going to be playing for the rest of the year are not offensive juggernauts. I mean, who knows what happens with Fresno State if they get their QB back? Maybe it'd be a different story. Air Force obviously is the best or one of the best with their rushing attack, but that's for way down the road. They could the Aztecs, they win their next 5, and they would already have clinched right before even facing Air Force. And so I think it's a reset, man. I think that when it comes to thinking about like who the Aztecs are, what they're like under Coach Horton as the offense coordinator, how the defense is going to kind of reinvent itself after the first 6 weeks. I think this is the least, I guess, known that the team has been, the most question marks going into a game, kind of a wait and see kind of a feeling since Arizona.
Yeah.
I mean, where you're just not sure exactly what's going to come about. Hawaii, they geared up to stop the run. I mean, San Diego State the last 2 years when they've played the Rainbow Warriors, they've basically abandoned the pass and they've just pounded the ball and won, even with a Jack Browning fake field goal, I think last year, and that was the difference in it. But they took the air out of the ball and they just pounded the rock. And Hawaii was like, you're not going to do that this year. We're going to so sell out to the run that you're going to absolutely have to beat us through the air. And I don't know that very many teams have been this aggressive with stopping the run. And I should say with the caveat, since they switched to the spread, right? This looked like how teams attacked the Aztecs when Jeff Horton was the offensive coordinator before, when they're still in the I formation and doing all that kind of stuff, where they just brought everybody, sold out everything, and said, you're going to have to make a play. We're going to hit the quarterback either we're going to stop the run or we're going to hit the quarterback if you do a play action, things of that nature. And, I don't know that that's going to necessarily be the approach that Nevada is going to take. It'll be interesting to see if Maiden is able to, just be a little bit more accurate, because I think he's going to be forced to be putting balls in windows, and he showed some capability of it, but he just really didn't have to. And his ability to just find, the one-on-one matchup, find the soft part in the defense, he was masterful in that. And it'll be interesting to see if that can continue, because I would expect Nevada to play a little bit more balanced, and what that means for the running game. It'll be interesting to see.
Brady Hoke didn't address this, and I don't think anybody asked him about Ross Ulugalo Masuli's status. He's missed 3 games, had a bye week, so it's been over a month since his injury. It'd be nice to get him back to kind of fortify that line, especially when you're going up against Dom Peterson this week. It'll be interesting to see what side Peterson, if he's going to be on the left or right side or over center. But he's had a phenomenal year. And I remember last year's game being in Carson. Peterson was fired up all game. He was constantly in the face of Aztec players, offensive linemen, running backs. I thought a few times he was going to get a personal foul for like a taunting or an unsportsmanlike.
Yeah.
I vividly remember him being so fired up after every play. And he's going to come in on, I assume, the same way, and it's teetering on that edge, right, without going over and hurting your team. But that's why I think the Aztecs' offensive line is going to have to be fired up and match that energy, because Peterson's going to bring it.
No, and I think it's right, and it's, again, it goes back to, maybe this is part of the unknowns that I was speaking about, a moment ago. There are so many new pieces on Nevada, right? I mean, I think that you look at the last couple of years, and to your point, Nevada has been one of the more physical games that the Aztecs play each year.
Yeah.
And, that if that, with as many new pieces, with, Norvell gone, to Colorado State. So many of the players who still had eligibility following him over to Colorado State. If they have that ability to I guess take on the identity of what this game has meant. But yeah, I think that's what it's going to be, is the tougher team is ultimately going to win. And I agree that the if you're circling a place where San Diego State could be had, or San Diego State is weak, it's going to be along that offensive line. And if Ross Masuli is back, that'll be a huge thing. But one thing that I also, just looking and finding interesting is, the Brady Hoke show on 760. He talked about this week about that part of the evaluation that they had was seeing if there were people who were not getting reps, if they deserve some reps. And that'll be really, really curious, because, one guy that has just surprised me that he hasn't been playing in the absence of Masuli is Joey Wright. He's somebody that was in the conversation as a starter throughout spring, conversation starter beginning at fall camp. He not only wasn't the first sub when Dean Abdullah came in originally, but when Abdullah got hurt, right, it was Tommy Marabella who was the next guy there. And so it's just a name that I think he's got the world of talent, and whatever the situation is, I don't really know, but if Masuli isn't able to go and they're looking for new starters, that's a guy that I really think could help and could get their team going.
That is interesting that instead of bringing Wright in after Abdullah, they brought in a backup center, Mirabella. The one interesting thing to note, when we're talking about Nevada and all their incoming transfers, there's 3 guys from San Diego State's team last year that are on Nevada this year, who transferred. Joey Capra, the backup offensive guard, it went to Nevada. Baylor Horning, quarterback, a walk-on quarterback, and then Hunter Kakuka, linebacker, who's a redshirt freshman. So I don't think either of them are going to be in this game, barring injuries. But it is, interesting. A couple of years ago, transferring within the conference was so you didn't see that, right? Because with the extra year of sitting out, but now with that rule gone, you just see so many people going from team to team. I mean, San Diego State has Justice Devai, who came from Hawaii. Just interesting that we're gonna see this so much more and more throughout the years, where you're gonna be playing somebody who's on your team as a conference rival now. So always interesting.
Most definitely. I think all those things are interesting, and Capra is always going to be linked a little bit to Cade Bennett, right? Because I don't know that Bennett is somebody that they would have went out and got if Capra had stayed. And Bennett has been really, really good, but Capra is one of those guys that people have questions about. Why did a young guy want to leave when there was so much opportunity that was going to be there for him, and he seemed to be like the next guy up? It's just interesting, like you said, that you're going to see all of those things. Anything else on Nevada?
No.
All right. So how about this scheduling news with Oklahoma?
That is exciting. SEC.
Yeah.
Soon to be an SEC team, right? They're in the Big 12 for one more year, but obviously by the time 2027 rolls around, they'll be in the SEC, and who knows where San Diego State will be.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's what I want to talk about with you. Is like there would be all of these conversations about that everybody in the Pac-12 has scheduled San Diego State except USC and Oregon. And the conversation had always been the reason that happened because the Aztecs didn't want to do a 2-for-1. They didn't want to have to play 2 at the other place to have them come back 1 over here. So it was a little bit surprising after hearing all of that for years that this is one of the fewer 2-for-1s that you're going to see, and they made that choice. And so I think that's it's just an interesting thing because of what you said with the conference realignment. Their schedule is packed with Pac-12 schools.
Yeah.
And if, conference realignment happens, that's going to be one thing that they're going to have to figure out is how do you replace all of the, and so in 2027, I think they have two SEC schools. And man, just thinking about, the possible schedule that they could have in 2027, it's only 5 years from now. I think that's a home game against Missouri, road
Yeah.
game against Oklahoma, and then a Big 12 or Pac 12 schedule. I mean, that could be exactly what, Aztec fans have been hoping for forever. And of course, in 5 years from now, if they don't play well, you can already see the be careful what you ask for, or all of those kinds of things. But it gives them the opportunity to be relevant nationally, and and that's what they want. I remember going to the last time that Oklahoma played in San Diego. It didn't have, from my recollection, it didn't have a ton of fanfare. It wasn't like it was like, oh man, they're playing Oklahoma. And Oklahoma was bad. They were bad for a good while. And San Diego State dominated them when they came here. It was like one of those like I remember as a young kid watching, Barry Switzer led Oklahoma play Jimmy Johnson led, Miami in those, and just in those battles, or then watching the same Oklahoma teams playing Nebraska, and both teams running the wishbone, and
Yeah.
just like, and it was, 3 yards in a cloud of dust every single play. And I remember all that. And then to see them in San Diego and to just see the Aztecs like they were on a different level, I think it was one of those like, okay, like maybe the Aztecs can be pretty good. And um, that was a very, very fun game just for that reason. I think there's some on YouTube. I think you can still find like the highlights of it and things like that. But big news, and I think that it's exactly fitting the description of what Snapdragon has been promised, right? I mean, that it's going to take them to another level, and now here they are being able to have and invite Oklahoma in for one season, and who knows where everything will be in 5 years. But pretty big news, and I think it um, has that little taste of just like, what do they know? What are they planning for that they're going to have all of their non-conference schedule, two of their non-conference schedule be against SEC teams, and there's suddenly no Pac-12 teams that are there anymore.
Well, it's with all the swirl around realignment, you kind of almost feel like teams can't really look too ahead in the future in scheduling these games because you don't know if you're going to end up having to cancel it because you end up in the same conference. So it is nice to see the announcement, but we have no idea where we're going to be or where, chances are San Diego State's not going to get to go to the SEC. So the Oklahoma game seems
I think
pretty
that's probably pretty safe. Yeah.
seems
Yeah.
pretty safe, but yeah, all these other Pac-12 games might have to be rescheduled, other than UCLA, right? Because UCLA is going to the Big Ten. But yeah, it's fun. It's fun to talk about. It's fun to see. We can already plan our trip to Norman, Oklahoma, in 2027 and 2031. But
Yeah,
a lot of fun stuff.
I no, I agree. And looking at some of these upcoming schedules that San Diego State has, it's UCLA and Oregon State next year, Washington State, California in 2024. 2025 is the same. UCLA and Oregon State in 2026. You get to the, Missouri and Oklahoma in 2027, Missouri, Arizona State in 2028, Oklahoma, Arizona State, 2029. So like I said, to your point, it's pretty wild. And then 2031 has UCLA at home and Oklahoma on the road, talking out about 9 years from now. And it's just it's pretty wild to think about, how like by that time it'll just be normal that UCLA is in the Big Ten and that Oklahoma is in the SEC, and some of my kids might not even like remember that wasn't always the case. So pretty interesting and a fun time. And as we've talked about before, Snapdragon Stadium coming along when it did just couldn't have happened better for the Aztecs.
Absolutely, something definitely to look forward to. As we talked about, San Diego State plays Nevada Saturday night, 7:30 p.m., CBS Sports Network. San Diego State is a 6.5-point favorite at the moment. I think they started off as a 9-point favorite.
I was going to say that's gone down, yeah.
Sometimes there's just no explanation for that stuff, like being favored by 23.5 over Hawaii, which proved to not be the smartest sportsbook spread. But we'll see how this game goes. The Aztecs obviously need a win. We'll see how the offense and the defense come back out of the bye. As always, thank you guys for listening. Make sure to hit the subscribe button on our YouTube channel and all of your favorite podcast platforms so you get notified once new episodes are on the air. We will talk to you guys Saturday night, hopefully with an Aztec victory. You are listening to the SDSU Football Podcast, presented by the East Village Times, with your hosts Andre Hagverdian and Paul Garrison.